I started playing guitar when I was 12 years old. I saw some family members of mine. I come from a long family of long line of musicians, and I caught a really good night with my cousin's band, and I was hooked. I was a guitar player then on out. I started off playing drums, by the way. A lot of people don't know that. That one night I saw a guitar in the right hands, changed my life completely. There's a man named Stephen Holland. Steve, I love you. Props to you. I'm self-taught. I didn't do any lessons. I went through a bunch of really junk guitars. 6 or 7 years before I played a show. By the time I started, and by the time I was able to get in front of people, about 6 years. Not being able to afford instruments, so I went through a lot of junk crap making it sound good. I learned a lot of stuff about that. If you can buy a $100 guitar and play a show with it for 2 years, you pick a lot of stuff up that way. Black Sabbath was one of my first major influences. Iron Maiden, later on, would have been a lot of punk rock bands like the Misfits, Sex Pistols, Circle Jerks, Dead Kennedys, that kind of thing. After that, I went a little less mainstream. I started listening to stuff like Corrosion of Conformity. Later on after that, Down was a major influence for me. Pepper Keenan. My favorite saying of all time is, if Pepper Keenan had a vagina, I'd hit that. Pepper Keenan, number one. I don't know why. Pepper is not what you would call a virtuoso by any stretch of the imagination, but he's a complete badass. In my eyes, he is anyways. Other than that, you got Dimebag, you got Randy Rhoads was one of my all-time favorites too, of all time. The first time I ever stepped on stage was at a place called the Blue Note Cafe. It was up in Delhi, Ohio, around Cincinnati. And I wasn't even old enough to get in the place, so the guys that I were playing with, we had to sneak in to play. We got in on an open jam night, and we had one of the bouncers actually let us in, take us to the stage so we could play. We've opened up for the likes of Seven Mary 3, Jackal, the Misfits. All three of those shows have been really big highlights in my life. Misfits especially, because I've got a long history with Misfits, and people that I grew up with. I lost a good friend named Johnny Armstrong that actually turned me on to the Misfits, and it meant a lot to me to open up for those guys. It was special. It really was. One of the lowest points in playing turned out to be one of the best nights of my life. It's a double-edged sword, man. We drove what would typically be a 45-minute drive in a billowing snowstorm. Took us about 2 hours to get there. We got there, set up, played for 2 people, and that was one of the best shows we ever played. The 2 people that were there loved every second that we done of it, and we put 100% energy into that for those 2 people. So it was kind of a low, but it was high. My heart's in rock, and all those other genres actually have fed rock and roll music to make rock what it is now. And I hear a lot of people say that rock's dead, it's not coming back, you're never going to have rock and roll again. I beg to differ. I see a different story there. I know a lot of people that love rock and roll, and they love what I do, and I appreciate the response. Well, if you look at the ones that are on the radio, they're here one year, they're gone the next. You'll get winter music, you'll get summer music, you'll get fall music. Every season it has its band that pops up and then it's gone. There's no real genre to it. They'll play maybe heavy metal. Nobody's doing really any solid rock music anymore. I've met most of the locals. Pretty much anybody that plays around Cincinnati's met me, or we've been in a band, or we've crossed paths somewhere. Chris Taylor, Dave Heffron, Greg Brown. Those guys are some of my oldest and dearest friends. I love them all to death. And I wish we could get, another. We need to do a resurgence of that band that we had together years ago. One of my first bands. That was, personal friends. I've met Bill Manspeaker. I've met everybody at 7 Mary 3. Those guys are awesome. The Misfits. Those guys are awesome. Jackal. Those guys are awesome. Fuel. Met those guys. Saving Abel. Met those guys. And they're all genuinely 100% awesome people. I'm a Gibson guy from way back. I love my Gibsons. I've got two, and I've got an SG and I've got a Les Paul, and I love them both. They're equally as badass as each other. They both completely sound different. I've had Stratocasters. I'm actually building one right now, which is going to be a monster. It's going to be pretty cool. Charvel. I've had a Charvel guitar that I bought used 20 years ago. Well, 22 years ago, actually. That is another love of mine. I love that guitar. Every guitar sounds different. Each one does. If you're into more of a bluesier country sound, in a less respect, rock and roll, Fender guitars are your guitar of choice. Heavy metal, hard rock, that kind of sound, you're going to go for a Gibson. That's my preference anyway. If it's comfortable, play it. If it stays in tune, that's the two main things you want. It stays in tune, it's comfortable, it doesn't weigh you down, it's not a pain in the butt to play it all night. That's the guitar for you. I gave up a career. I gave up several careers for a dream. I was made to be a guitar player, and I think that's all I'm ever going to be.